What a legacy, right? Join me in giving these grandchildren a hand. That's not easy to do. My name's Dave Sanders, and I've been a friend of Cas for about 40 years, and Sylvia is my wife. And I want to thank Pastor Art for being here. Cas and Mary's pastors, Mike and Cheryl Johnson, are actually in Africa right now on a mission trip, and they have sent their love and are sorry that they could not be here for this celebration. I'm honored to be able to add a few of my memories representing the brothers and the brothers-in-laws and sisters-in-laws in this family. And it's just so great to see such a huge crowd here to send Cas off. I can't say Cas and I were always great friends, as I was the first tall white guy to come knocking on his door to meet a girl. I was not the last, but Doug and George, you owe me, because I did plow the ground. We weren't great friends at the beginning, but by the end we really were. He was a little skeptical of me, to say the least, and not sure what my motives were. I remember one of the first conversations we had, he sat me down in his living room. It was just me and him, and he said, "David, you got to know we're Christian people. And I don't know what you have on your mind, but if it's not going to church, you might as well forget about it." So I listened to that, and I started going to church too. There was, at the time, Cas expanded his house several times, but at the time I was dating Sylvia, the living room was here. There was an accordion divider, and what would normally be the formal dining room had been turned into their master bedroom. So late evening, Sylvia and I would be sitting on the couch. 18 inches behind us was Cas and Mary in the bed trying to go to sleep. And wouldn't be long before I'd hear, "Sylvia, días, niño, para casa, es muy tarde." Sorry if I said that wrong, but I knew I got the message. It was time to go. Cas was a proud man, not in an arrogant way, but he was proud. He was proud of, like the kids said, building things. He was proud of serving as an usher for over 20 years with our friend Greg Shook back there. And actually, that, like Greg reminded me the other day, Cas actually served 30 years prior to that at other churches he was in. So it's probably like 50 years of ushering. He was extremely proud of his children and his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren. And he was proud of his wife, Mary. He loved her so much. He really paid attention to details. And, I remember so many times going into houses recently when he would start inspecting and it was not up to his standards. He hated when they switched from the wood trim to the masonite cardboard stuff that he told me gets wet one time, David, and it's shot. So he always used the top quality materials, and he hated when it got cut like that too. We built a shed together in my backyard, and it was a 12 by 12 shed with the help of the Fletcher family too. But they got the foundation laid, and then I took Cas to one of these places that sells them, and I said, "Cas, you think you can build me one of these? Because these are pretty expensive." And he's got his tape measure out, and I took some pictures, and he built it exactly like that model. Everything from the ground up, including the shingles on the roof. He did it all. I loved him for that. He'd kind of go into this zone when he put his carpenter tool belt on, and that pencil came from behind his ear and the cap, and he'd start figuring stuff on the plywood. And it was amazing how he could figure. I mean, he really knew math and the way he could figure materials and how to cut just right out of a sheet of plywood to not waste anything. Pass a lot of that on to Rudy and Fred too. They're great craftsmen like that too. He paid attention to details in his ushering duties too, as Greg can tell you. He took special pride in serving the Holy Communion, And he really believed it deserved the reverence and honor that he gave it. And he wanted everybody else to do the same. Of course, Cas always had his suit and tie on, probably the one of only two. He and Greg were the only ones in the church with a tie, but he always had it. And he wasn't ever too happy when someone wasn't with the program, when some rookie ushers would get out of line or go to the wrong place. He was not happy. But he served faithfully and did his best to make it right for the Lord. He loved his church family. There was the uniform. He had to have the right cap, had to have the jersey, had to have his chair, certain chair. Of course, he had the big screen TV. But he also had a traditional meal, which was Lockhart sausage. That was his lucky cowboy meal. And early on, of course, we used to eat a lot. In the later years, the doctor said he needed to kind of cut back. But before the season, usually all the guys would take him to Lockhart, and we'd go to the barbecue places there, and we'd buy Cas a box of cold ones. He'd bring them back, put them in the freezer, and every game day he'd get that one sausage link. I don't know, did he give you any, Grandma? I don't know if he did or not. But one sausage link he allowed himself per game. Of course, he was known in the past few years to occasionally take a siesta during Pastor Mike's sermons, but that's to be expected. Everybody there at the church loves Cas and Mary. I can't tell you how many hugs they would get every time they showed up. Yeah, he was happiest when he was working. He worked hard his whole life. He told me about his young days picking cotton, pulling that huge bag, and he was determined to pick more than anybody else. I think he made $2 a day. They're paid by the pound. But that's where his work ethic got started. But he realized from that farming was not for him. So he wanted out of that. That's when he went to the big city, got the job, and started learning some other skills. And he did really well with it. As you know, Cas was a loyal Cowboy fan. The first game of the season, a week ago yesterday, I was able to sit in this hospital room here in Pflugerville at the nursing home, and we watched the game together. And he had his roommate cheering by the end of the game. They won. It was a great game, but he was with it the whole way, and that was a special memory for me. Anybody that ever watched a game with him would hear him say, Tony, what are you doing? Tony, why are you throwing it there? He didn't understand all the subtleties of the game, but he knew when Tony Romo messed up. And he did not like it. He had a lot of traditions when he watched the game. Talking about football, it's interesting to know that as he was growing up, when he became a Christian, he was in a very strict kind of mindset as far as what was okay and what was not. So even though Rudy was one of the best wide receivers in Austin, Texas in high school football, he never saw him play football until the very last game. And that was a good one because he saw him win the championship at Memorial Stadium in the state playoffs with Reagan High School. And he regretted that. But it was just the way they were taught that Christians didn't go to movies and football games and things like that. Now, later on, he loosened up, and when the guys started playing softball, he was there all the time. He even sponsored the team. He loved the Gethsemane Disciples, and he sponsored. I think he'd wear the uniform, and I think he even sponsored the team and bought the uniforms for them. He told me he went to watch Doug play one time, and he said, "Freddie, where's Doug?" And Freddie said, "Daddy's there on the ground. They're carrying him off." And I don't know why Cas thought that was so funny, but he told me that over and over. Doug was on the ground. Cas didn't take many vacations, but when we did, it was usually a huge family migration down to Corpus. I'm talking a caravan with 3 or 4 cars, and in those days we had CB radios, and the kids would love talking to each other. And Cas was not a swimmer. I never saw him in the water. I don't know if he could swim or not, but he loved the ocean. And what he loved to do was he had binoculars, and he loved to look at those big ships. He'd just sit and look at those those ships out. I know he just, I guess, dreamed of sailing away someday. One of the things Cas was most proud of was that his children were all Christians. And not just said they were Christians, but they were all really active believers. And you heard that in the grandkids today. Growing up, there wasn't much choice about that. It was church Sunday morning, church Sunday night, church Tuesday night, and church Thursday night. Without fail, if the doors were open, Cas and his family were going to be there. Not to mention the tent revivals down on First Street, and they'd be the first ones there. Cas even did a little preaching too. From early on, there was music in the family. Cas played the guitar. He loved playing the old corridos, and Raymond, his son Raymond, was one of the best bass players I ever heard in my life. Fred plays the drums, Rita plays the piano, is an amazing singer. Eva even used to sing with the group. One of the groups was called The New Moments. One was called Latter Rain. Rudy went to Bible school. He was a great student of the Word and a great preacher. Mary was the love of Cas's life. She called him Daddy. He called her Mama. You can't really think of one without the other. It's just Cas and Mary. 66 years. I can't really get my head around that. You know, Grandma never did drive. Well, I think she did drive one time, and that was the end of it. I think they mutually, it ended badly, and there was a mutual decision that Cas would do the driving from now on. But, you know, even after Grandma hurt her leg and has been on a walker, he took such good care of her. He was always attentive to her, never impatient, getting her walker out, helping her in, pulling the car up. It's just what he did. And he really, really loved her. There were many of us that were married into the family, and he treated us all with love and respect. As you heard, more than one family lived under his roof for a while for temporary times while they were being relocated. His daughter-in-laws, Liz and Yvonne, he loved like daughters. They called him Dad. I went to church with him and watched quite a few Cowboy games with him. George was so good to him. George arranged to get him a new guitar not too long ago. Doug helped him with so many projects throughout the years, and it was always someone Cas counted on. It was a good example. This was a few months ago. His patio was leaking, and that just drove him crazy. It was rotted plywood, and it looked ugly. Well, the whole family showed up, all the brothers and sisters and in-laws, and they redid it completely. And the whole yard cleaned it up, and you'd see him peeking out, you know, from inside, wishing he could go out and supervise. But they did a great job, and I'd see him out later looking up at that patio. He'd just sit out there and just smile, just looking at it. It made him so happy. He loved his children so much. Esther, Eva, Rita, Fred, Sylvie, Rudy, and Raymond. He probably didn't always know how to express it, but there was no doubt he was proud of each of you and loved you, each in your own way. Each child had a special relationship with him that was unique and different than the others. You know, I was thinking, it's like if Cas's life is like a rock in a pond. Cas and Mary started this ripple. And then if you think about all their kids and the rocks, now they've been thrown in these ponds, and the circle just keeps getting wider and wider. And now the grandkids. And who's at the middle of it? Cas and Mary. So that's a beautiful, beautiful legacy. That last night in the hospital room, that circle was even more real. When I saw all those loved ones pressing around him, and we knew it was probably going to be, the end was near. One by one, nobody organized anything. It just happened. They just started going up, talking to him, and holding his hand. And Grandma was holding his hand the whole time, just stroking it. And we sang some songs, and we read from the Bible, and we prayed, and we laughed, we cried, and he was gone. And we miss him. We miss him a lot. I'm glad he's in a better place, but we really do miss him. You know, and yesterday afternoon, I could have sworn I heard a cheer from up in heaven when the Cowboys won again. But we'll miss you, Cass. And he looked forward to it.